Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Kate, and I manage global communications for our data centers. And today I have Joe and Anita here, and we're going to talk with you all about our work on the Google Data Center team. Joe and Anita, why don't you introduce yourselves? Joe?
Thank you, Kate. My name is Joe Kava. I'm the Vice President of our Global Data Center program. I've been at Google for 12 years, and I've really loved every minute of it.
And I'll go.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Anita Tarab. I'm the Director of Health, Safety, and Environment for the Google Data Centers, and I've been at Google for 5 years, and it feels like I started yesterday.
Great. Well, we'll be answering live questions later on, so don't forget to submit your questions via the live stream chat. And with that, let's dive in. So our first question is, how would you describe working as part of the Google Data Center team? Why don't we start with Joe?
Okay. So to me, one of the attributes of our data center team and one of the things that we look for most when we're interviewing candidates is collaboration. Because for us, our teams are responsible for the full life cycle of the data centers. So from the earliest part of land selection all the way through operations and eventually end of life for a data center. So we take a kind of a 360 approach to our data center program. So when we're developing a new design standard, we have people from operations and health and safety and security and the engineering team all at the table together, working on what is the next plan of record for our data center. So it really is a very collaborative approach, and we try and optimize, like I said, in a 360 fashion.
Great, great. And Anita?
And if I can bring it up in a very personal way, first of all, it's an opportunity to work with some of the most switched on, engaged, intelligent people in the world. And from a very personal point of view, it is like working in a candy store for a health and safety professional. We have an opportunity to try new things, to express ourselves in different ways, and it is absolutely refreshing.
Great. Well, maybe you can tell me about the teams that are part of Google Data Centers and what are some of the most interesting challenges the team has had a chance to work on?
Gosh, the teams involved in Google Data Centers are anyone from people who buy land and property to designers, to construction people, people who are on our construction sites, from anything from design to people who understand how the trades and how things work, to our health and safety people, and then from there we'll go into operations and the people who work within the operations portion of the data center. And I'm not just talking about software engineers. I'm talking about people who know how to fix generators and heating and cooling equipment. And those are such a diverse and interesting group of people that we do get to work with.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you look at it from the very earliest time when we decide that we want a new data center in a region, we have negotiators that are working on acquiring land and negotiating the utility contracts that we're going to need for that. Then we have designers and all the operations teams that are working on what type of a design do we want at that site. And then you have the construction management teams that are the PMs and the construction managers that are helping to execute that building. And then you have all of the operations teams, from commissioning the facilities to operating the critical infrastructure and the IT infrastructure. And then you have the physical security teams also that are making sure that we're protecting the data center and all of the customers' information at that data center. And of course, the health and safety team. So everyone's working kind of in partnership.
And the communications people.
And the communications people, of course.
Great. What would you say is maybe an example of one of the most interesting challenges your team has worked on?
So, that is a wonderful question. I've often been told in my career that health and safety, you kind of suck the fun out of life, and and it's been something that I've taken quite personally and to heart. And I believe that when you look at a health and safety program like we do at the data centers, it's how do you influence people? How do you talk to the demographic that you're dealing with? And it's not the standard, don't do this, don't do that, but it's to reach out into a more collegial way, a more exciting way, a more engaging way. And that's what we've been doing, and I think having some really good results.
Yeah, I mean, I will, pay you compliments that your team have put together some of the most interesting, funny, engaging programs around, really important topics about, keeping people safe and protecting the environment and keeping people healthy. And you've done it in a way that is not only engaging, but I think fun and very, very googly, and it's had great impact. I mean, I'm particularly proud of your accomplishments.
Thank you.
Okay, so on that note, Google has a world-class health and safety program. How important is it for the team to continue to be leaders in this space?
So that's the most wonderful part about being at Google, actually, is that it is one of the largest platforms in the world. And, you can go to a conference, you can share your ideas. People reach out to us from different industries and different places and say, how are you handling this? Or, I've never thought of handling it that way. And one of our most recent things right now is that we are really, truly focusing on mental health. Because mental health is a crisis. And we're coming about it in a very proactive, googly way where people can understand, how do they interact with each other in the workplace, for example. And people are reaching out to us from other industries to share these things. And it's very gratifying, and it's also, I think, our responsibility as Googlers to share.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but especially when it comes to health and safety, there is no intellectual property in that, meaning that we want to share everything that we've learned, and it's amazing to see how, not just the partners that we do business with that have engaged with you and your team, but also even other construction companies that do not work with us, they've come and said, how do we get involved in that? Because there's so much learning that you guys are making accessible to us. And so I think, you're really not just changing our program, you're helping to change an industry. And, construction industry has been, more than 100 years in this country, and largely kind of the same.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that your team doesn't say that this is the way it's always been and it always has to be that way, that a lot of what we do is bring new innovative thoughts on how to approach this.
Great. Yes, thank you for that very important work. Tell me a little bit about how teams collaborate to make decisions that impact the business.
So I'll jump in a little bit on that. I think that one of the unique things at Google is that all the teams have a voice in all of the major decisions. And we look at everything mostly from a total cost of ownership perspective. So that means that there's always trade-offs. And you have to have good discourse and discussion and debate about these trade-offs to make the right business decisions. And if you're going to do that properly, you have to also consider perspectives from all the different teams that are involved in the design, operation, construction, safety, everything. So we have in our forums, our engineering forums, everyone at the table, so that everyone has a chance to have their voice heard. And even if it's not their team's primary responsibility, right? Good ideas come from everywhere. And so even if you're the team that is responsible for electrical design, but a health and safety person comes up with a much better idea about the way that we could design or build the electrical systems, we want to hear that, and we want to implement those good ideas. So we don't treat people in silos in that regard.
Absolutely.
You know, Joe, I think that when allowing people to step outside of their swim lanes often brings us some of the most vibrant ideas, because who knows better how to use a particular tool or design than the person who has to interact with it on a daily basis. And it's really great that we reach out and expect people to engage at all phases of this.
And the diversity of perspectives, I mean, we have people working in our teams that come from all different backgrounds and all different past work experiences, and sometimes directly out of school. And, you know, Anita, when you came to our program, you were from a totally different industry, right?
Yes, I was. I came to Google from mining, from gold mining, not data mining, as Joe reminds me. And in fact, when I got a note from Google, I thought it was spam. And then they mentioned someone I knew, and I went, well, it's good spam. You know, here I am at Google, which is probably the last place where I thought that I would ever fit in or work. And my team is from the military, it is from industry, from car manufacturing to candy making to beer making. Some people come from, even from academia, people come from the trades. It's really a wonderful and great diverse perspective, and we love that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm always shocked to hear this, but I kind of understand that when I'm talking with people at the data centers, when I'm talking with people in the local communities in which we're operating, I hear over and over again, I didn't think a person like me could work for Google because I'm not a software engineer, I don't code, and you know, and I thought that that's all that you hired. And it's amazing when you look at all of the different types of jobs and the backgrounds that we have at the data centers, from the very traditional electrical, mechanical, and civil structural engineering, but then we have folks from the military that come with that sense of fulfilling mission and ownership and understanding what mission critical really is. We have folks from health and safety backgrounds, from all different types of program management, from communications professionals. We have folks in physical security. And so there's all types of different opportunities available, and I think people just forget that sometimes.
Right, absolutely. I too thought when I was contacted by Google that it was some kind of a hoax. Okay, well, we have some live questions. We can jump right in. The first one is, on what scale has Google been implementing liquid cooling?
Yeah, I'll take that. So kind of two different answers, right? We have been using water economized cooling solutions for many years. We don't have one size fits all from a cooling solution, so some of our sites use direct air economized solutions. Some of them use wastewater or water from an industrial shipping canal that we clean just to make it good enough for the makeup water in the cooling towers. And some of them use stormwater runoff. But really what we've been focused on recently with the advent of our very high performance chips for ML and AI systems, we're using liquid cooling at the chip level. So our internal thermal engineering and mechanical engineering teams developed a cold plate solution that the chips actually sit right on. And so you've got the cooling liquid going right through there on the motherboard and to a dedicated heat exchanger that we put at the row. So over all the rows that house our dedicated ML and AI systems, you have dedicated liquid cooling directly to the chips in those cases.
So cool. Very cool. Okay, next, how do you resolve and manage conflicting priorities?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything we do, we base on a set of principles or pillars of how we act and behave and the decisions we make. And they are based on, you know, serving our customers, our clients, and serving each other and being good citizens in the communities that we work in. And so if there are conflicting priorities, we always defer to our guiding pillars and principles, which really makes our decision making so much easier.
And I like to remind folks on my team, especially my leaders, that when you're trying to prioritize, if you use kind of the lens of what's good for Google, then what's good for the team, and then what's good for yourself in that priority, then you almost always make the right decisions.
That simplifies it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. As new information is learned during the operate phase of the data centers, is that fed back into the 360 life cycle of the data center?
That's a really good question. I'll start out, and I'm sure
Sure.
that you have perspective on this as well. Absolutely. So we have a tremendous amount of data that we're gathering from the 24/7 operations in these data centers all over the world. A lot of that performance feedback, a lot of that reliability analysis, the data goes directly back to the engineering teams that are doing the modeling for the next generation of designs. So what maybe we thought was a great idea and the model said that this is going to work perfectly, sometimes in operations you learn that there were things that didn't work exactly as they were modeled. So we're constantly feeding back that information to the design teams so that we can learn and improve for next generation.
Yeah, I mean, and to just dovetail a little bit on that, when we feed into the design teams, we also feed from different perspectives now. So we feed from the user perspective, we feed from the health and safety perspective, from the environmental perspective, and that now gets filtered right back into the design teams where we have representatives looking at the designs, working with the design teams to assure that lessons learned are incorporated.
Great. Okay. How are design and operations teams organized geographically?
So from a design and operations perspective, we have design teams based geographically, so some in North America, some in Europe, some in APAC. At the site level, we actually have teams that are at each individual site that are there, they're engineering and operations and construction and program management at each site level so that they're helping to answer questions in real time that comes up during construction. On the operations side, it's a globally distributed team. So both from facilities and IT operations, they roll up under one organization globally, but they are at the actual site level, and the teams work as one organization at each individual site level. And that helps to drive, I think, better efficiency. It helps to kind of break down the communication barriers. Those of you that have studied anything about data centers know that historically one of the biggest challenges has been the divide between facilities and IT operations. And most companies have them reporting to different parts of the organization. Facilities might report up to finance, IT reports into engineering, and they don't talk, they don't communicate, and they miss a lot of opportunities that way. So we have broken down those barriers, and that's been that way ever since I got here, and I think ever since the beginning of Google, it was just built as one common organization.
Okay.
And in terms of one team talking to another team outside of the data centers, with Google, I mean we use Google Voice applications, and we talk to each other as if we're in the same room.
And this is kind of tied to the next question. Does this help you reduce duplication of efforts and increase cross-pollination of ideas?
It does, so once again, we give a lot of autonomy to the local teams so that they can make decisions and operate quickly and move fast. But by the same token, we want the lessons learned around the world to come back so that we can all benefit from it. If one data center learns something and improves some type of operations or improves on design or construction, that's interesting, but it's much more impactful if everyone can benefit from that. So we have a lot of methods in place to allow for that free exchange and information flow so that everyone is learning from each other. But there are also some local, unique standards that have to be applied. Electrical codes are different in different parts of the world, and health and safety codes. And so we have to abide by those. But where we can standardize and learn the same lessons, we encourage that.
Right, right.
You know, Kate, I would think, and I think in my career that at Google we communicate much, much more than any place I've ever worked. We talk to each other, we write to each other, we text each other. It is a truly an organization or a society based on a lot of communication.
Openness.
Yeah.
Transparency, and
Transparency,
collaboration.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, I agree. Wonderful. Okay, so what does the culture of innovation look like at Google?
You should take that because I have a lot to say.
I think that the words that describe our innovation culture at Google are relentless, laser focused. Those are some of the terms that come to mind for me, because no matter how good we're doing in any one area, whether it's mechanical cooling systems or electrical distribution systems, we believe that there's always more to do. There's always something you can do better. And so we don't just rest on our laurels. An example that I've spoken about previously is our cooling solutions. I think that probably during the first 8 or 10 years of my tenure at Google, I think we changed our our mechanical cooling system design. I think we changed it like 6 times. So roughly about every 18 months. And we kind of go into the design phase for each site as how can we best optimize for that specific site, that geography, that climate, and how can we minimize our wasted energy consumption? How can we maximize efficiency? How can we maximize environmental protection and sustainability? And so with that, there's always this feeling of you can always do better. And so that really kind of sums up our culture of innovation in our design teams and our operations teams as well. I think that everyone feels that that's part of their responsibility.
And I can give you an example. In my team, we look at what can we do that will protect lives, protect the environment. Is there another step we can take that has never been taken before? And think about this. What if we, with all the data we have, could pinpoint perhaps when the next accident would be and prevent that accident? Wouldn't that be amazing? And so we're working on that, by the way.
Amazing. These are great questions.
They are.
Let's see. Anita, can you talk about how long it takes to adapt to the Google culture when you're coming from other industries such as oil and gas?
Well, if you're me, probably a little longer. But I think it almost depends on who you are, right? And are you the kind of person that is excited about a challenge, excited about learning new things, okay with not knowing initially, okay with realizing that this is a little different here, and then just being open to becoming a part of that, and basically being open is probably the biggest thing I can say in terms of adapting. Realizing that it's not like it was in your last job, and things are done for reasons that you may not know initially, but you will know or you will figure it out. And it's also a very exciting process to go through if you allow it to be exciting.
Yeah, I think that we have programs in place that help, of course, like assigning mentors and buddies and things like that to help bring new Googlers on board and introduce them to our systems. But it is a process because a lot of our tools are built internally, and it's something that you would have never had experience with at another company. Even just learning to operate within the Google suite of online collaboration products, it's new, and there is a learning curve. So we know that, and the best thing that you can do coming into Google is ask for help. Because every person at Google remembers what it was like when they first started. And they know how confusing and how new this is, and everyone is so willing to help. So just feel free to say, I don't know how to do this, and can someone help me? And then it makes the learning curve much, much easier.
Or the alphabet soup of things that we call things.
Yeah, right. I
There's
mean,
no way you'll know that.
Yes, yes.
all our acronyms, of course, yeah.
Okay, so our last question is, as your GDC teams, Google Data Center teams are hiring, what qualities are you looking for when building out your teams?
Well, I'll go to the first one that Joe just mentioned, which is curiosity.
Yes.
And then after that, I would say a very positive attitude, which goes a long way. Being humble enough to say, I don't know and I need to know. And then after that, the real desire to want to be a part of something, the desire to roll up your sleeves and get a job done and celebrate and be proud when the job is done, or just be feeling great about being part of a wonderful team that is also and can be a very nurturing team as well.
Yes.
I think that, first of all, everyone that comes to Google knows their stuff in their domain of expertise. So, there's of course the technical attributes that we always interview for. Beyond that, I think it's the collaboration, the openness, the teamwork. Nobody works in isolation at Google. I think that other things that we really value at Google are, like you said, that curiosity, because there is no book that I can give you on how to build a Google. It's never been done before. So a lot of the times we're having to figure this out as we go. So that curiosity, that openness, that willingness to say, I don't know, but let's figure it out together. Those are the types of attributes that really lead to successful careers at Google.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for submitting
I
these
found.
great questions. Oh, see, Google is trying to help us as we go. Be sure and check the description box for additional resources and subscribe to Life at Google on YouTube for more videos. And thank you, Joe. Thank you, Anita, for joining me
Kate.
today.
Thanks, Anita.
And thank you all for watching.